we all know I say probation's a scam.
Yeah, probation's
it's a scam. And
Why do you say that?
And I've seen judges yell in courtrooms at probation officers. It is.
Because like you said, you're at the mercy of the probation officer.
Yeah.
Some are better than others, just like any professional, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome to this episode of Badges to Briefcases, the Gans Law podcast. I'm your host, attorney Brandon Gans. Today's episode is about violation of probation. That's right, VOP, prosecutor's revenge, whatever you want to call it. We're going to find out in this episode why it's called that. If you don't already follow us, hit us up on all socials. We're Gans_Law. Today I've got with me my wonderful, lovely co-host, attorney Danielle Padilla.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So today is probation day. All right. So what is probation in Florida?
What is probation? Probation in Florida, it's I guess you could say it's a type of sentence that can be given to you for punishment after committing a crime if you're found guilty. And it's a way, people will look at it like a way to stay outside of jail, right? Because
exactly.
If it's not probation, then what is it?
Because people think, oh, I got arrested, I got in trouble, I'm going to jail.
Right.
But there's an alternative, and it's called
probation.
and so it's essentially a way that they can supervise you.
Absolutely.
Make sure you do all your conditions.
And put all these stipulations, unfortunately, that they're going to put, because it's not just being supervised on probation, it's going to be being supervised on probation by a probation officer plus maybe classes, plus maybe fines, community service hours, random drug testing. Maybe there'll be a condition that you can't even drink alcohol. There can be so many conditions that they put. No contact orders are part of probation conditions as well sometimes. So many things. So it's really probation plus.
It really is.
All these other things.
And so do you think people sometimes underestimate how serious probation can be?
Absolutely. Like, we all know I say probation's a scam.
Yeah, probation's
it's a scam.
Why do you say that?
I don't say it lightly either, because I feel that the system is designed to fail the people. And I say that because probation is very, very easy to violate, in my opinion. And I'll tell you why. Because we, sometimes see clients that are fortunate enough to be able to gather funds from family, friends, or savings, or whatever, wherever, and be able to get the assistance of good counsel, right? But not everyone is in a position to have that privilege, right?
Sure.
So if they're not in a position to have that privilege and they cannot hire private counsel, what happens? They're going to get a public defender. Great. Okay, cool. But what is the indicator with that? A lack of funds, right? One of the things that people don't see with probation is the system, meaning the courts, is putting you on probation so that you can be supervised because they've deemed that this is the punishment that they should give you, right? But you know what they're not telling you up front? You're paying for this supervision. So let's say a client who is indigent, lacking funds, they're already facing these classes that maybe is a condition. They have to pay for it, by the way. Then they have to pay fines, within the time period that they're given. They have all of these costs accumulating. But the one that is not specifically written as a condition is paying your supervision costs of probation.
I'm glad you talked about that, because it's under the radar.
It's a scam.
Yeah, you get charged every single month just for the privilege of being on probation, in addition to all these special and general conditions.
Right. And that's a scam to me, because at the end of the day, you want me on probation. You're deeming that I've made this crime. You want to find me guilty and this is the sentence you want to give me. Cool. But then I'm having to pay for something that I didn't choose. I mean, like, they're treating it like a subscription or something. And it's like, at the end of the day, right? Like a month, because you're paying monthly for that supervision, right? And depending
it's like the Netflix subscription from the government.
Right, that you don't want, except you don't want it. I want my Netflix. Exactly. So that's the difference. The difference is most of the time people don't see it. And although to some, financially, it might not be cumbersome, to indigent clients, it is. Let me tell you something. $50 a month over the life of, let's say, 12 months, for some people is a lot of money. and a lot of money that they do not have on top of the fines, on top of the classes. So then what happens? The reason why I'm like so hard-strung about, having to pay supervision, which I think is a scam, is because if you don't pay your supervision, what happens? They could violate you just off of not paying your supervision as a technical violation. That's a scam, That's a scam. And that's why we know probation carries technical violations and then obviously new law violations, which are different. But this is a technical violation. And that's why I say it's a scam, because something so little, such as missing maybe a $50 supervision payment, if it's a misdemeanor crime, it's gonna violate you if the probation officer chooses to foul on it.
Sure. And they're nitpicky. They will go down and they'll list every little thing. Well, you didn't pay your $50 in October, and you didn't have these court costs paid. Even if your probation's not over and there's time left, they still violate you for it. So, do you ever see anyone like violate probation accidentally?
Yeah. I had one time a situation, cleared up, but one of the things that people, I think, take for granted when they're going into probation is, if you're going to possibly be random drug tested, but that also includes like medications that you are being prescribed by your doctor properly. I think people overlook, like, maybe I should talk to my probation officer ahead of time and let them know, that I'm on these lists of, and obviously they can provide proof, right?
Sure.
Let me just give them a heads up that I am on these medications so that if I'm random drug tested and something is skewed, they know why, right? Because I've provided the documents from my doctor. Next thing you know, they're random drug tested, never thought about providing the proof. Next thing you know, they're in handcuffs, violation of probation, hot drug tests. And then, there's ways to fix it, obviously, but then that sucks.
Yeah,
right?
And you're like, well, I had a medical marijuana card. Yeah. Well, but you never provided that or told your PO, so probation officer.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Yeah. And I see also too a common violation is people just not reporting. They don't, right, one of the most common. Either they don't go in for that initial appointment, like, I just got put on probation yesterday. Like, well, yeah, you have to go check in within so many hours. Usually it's 24 hours.
Absolutely, and they will get you.
Or so you have someone that has been reporting, but they've been on probation for 20 months.
Yeah.
The 21st month,
I've seen it.
Life happens, right?
Yes,
and they forget to check in, boom, violation.
Yeah.
And then what happens if you get a violation?
Yeah, you go back to jail.
You go back to jail.
Yeah.
So, and
it sucks.
yeah, and we're gonna get into it, but you don't have the same rights on a VOP that you would have on a new case.
Absolutely not. I had an incident like that one time, and the probation office I knew wasn't. And then that's the thing, you're at the mercy of the office and how responsive they are to their phones and stuff. And I knew this particular office was not responsive at all. And my client who was on probation was like, listen, I can't get the office to pick up. I said, okay, well, you're not gonna get violated for missing an appointment. It was ahead of time. So I said, we're gonna resolve this. Don't worry. I said, what are you gonna do? I'm getting in my car. You're gonna get in your car. I'm getting in my car. I dropped what I was doing, got in my car, drove to the probation office. I demanded for a supervisor to come out. And I said, your probation officer is non-responsive because we've made several attempts to pick up the phone regarding this check-in that we need rescheduled, that was told could be rescheduled with no rescheduling from your office. You're not gonna get my client on a violation because you're not picking up the phone. So I don't know what we need to do, but we're gonna square this off right now. It got taken care of.
I cannot believe you did that. I love that. Here's why I love that. First of all, that's next level. But secondly, I can't tell you how many times over the years the frustration.
It's frustrating.
That my clients have had. I call probation. I told them I can't make it, or so they're not responding. Yes. They're not picking up the phones. They're not responding to emails. Yeah. So
it happens all the time.
Yeah, what you did is like a dream for me. Like I love that.
Because thankfully where I was at in that moment was not too far from the office. So I said, you know what? I'm going.
That's awesome.
So I drove there.
Yeah,
and they know me very well now there. So
everyone knows you at this point. but no, that's like the number one most frustrating thing.
It is.
Because like you said, you're at the mercy of the probation officer.
Yeah.
Some are better than others, just like any professional, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of people don't know this about me. I actually, back in college, volunteered working with probation, so I could learn a little bit more about it. I don't really talk about it.
I learn something new about you every day. My God.
And I did it just it wasn't even an internship. It was just something I wanted to do to learn more about it. And it was enlightening, let me tell you, because again, you're dealing with probation officers that are, they're working for the state. They're not always the most attentive people. So I'm not surprised to hear that they're not picking up the phone. They're not doing the emails.
Listen, I've seen judges yell in courtrooms at probation officers and say the amount of VOPs that have been coming in that are not even true, because the attorneys are walking in with all the proof that this is not even true, is unacceptable and not fair to the people. I have stood in a courtroom watching a judge give this speech. So that is horrible when you have a judge telling a slew of probation officers, your office needs to get it together.
Absolutely.
This is not acceptable.
It's not just negligent, it's unethical, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
If someone did show up or they did provide proof of community service hours and you're saying they didn't, like that is extreme gross negligence, because the result is not, just, explain yourself. No, you go to jail, you're in on no bond, and you wait for your hearing. And for what? If you didn't do anything wrong. So, so there's two types of violation of probation causes, right?
Yeah.
And I think you already touched on it. You have a technical violation and a new law violation.
Yeah.
So just kind of explain briefly, like what's the difference between the two?
Technicals are gonna be the one we just spoke about, failure to pay supervision. That's gonna be considered a technical. Technical could also be, not submitting 5 of your community service hours. We could square that off. Things that we could really square off under the law, technicals, the biggest thing to learn from this is technical violations under the law, especially when they're monetary, like failure to pay supervision. When they're monetary, they're not going to be considered a willful violation, right? And that's most of the time how we can mitigate it, fix it, provide proof, and argue to the judge it's not a willful violation, especially if it's money, especially if a person's indigent, things of that nature now. When it comes to a new law violation, oh man, that's the real violation of probation fight, right? Because a part of the stipulation of being on probation under supervision is that you're proving in essence to the court that you are not gonna make mistakes under the law again, right? You're not gonna commit a crime. You've learned your lesson. You're gonna be in good behavior, good standing. And if you go and you commit another crime, you have basically just told the courts, like, I am not able to be given an opportunity to be in society, to be free on my own recognizance and behave, right? Yeah. In essence. And judges do not take that lightly. And why it's an even bigger problem that people don't see is you're dealing with now 2 monsters, right? Because you're dealing with the new law case, whatever new charge you caught, whatever sentence the maximum could be, on top of now, once you violate probation, you're facing the maximum that the original charge that you were put on probation can be sentenced to. Right. So you're looking at 2 different things if the new law proceeds forward and it's not dropped. Those are 2 monsters you're fighting at the same time.
Exactly. So the violation of probation could be a new law offense, meaning you've committed a new crime, or it could be a technical, which is anything other than a new law offense. Pretty much. Like you said,
that's
not reporting, failure to pay fines, yada, yada, yada. So, and sometimes you have both, right? Because like you'll see sometimes, your client picked up a new law offense. Well, they did so while they were in a different county. Well, now we have a new law of the new offense and a technical of leaving the county without permission. So, they can be together. But one caveat, I'll always push back on prosecutors. Your client violated, he got a new law. I said, well, how do you figure it? Well, he got arrested. Okay, well, getting arrested is not a violation of probation. I know that sounds crazy. It's committing a new law offense. So sometimes I'll get a new law offense, and I'll look at it, and it's complete BS.
Of course.
He didn't, even if you take these facts as true, that's not illegal. So the mere fact that he was arrested is not actually a violation. It's whether he committed the crime. So if you go to a VOP hearing, the fact that he was arrested, not enough. You have to prove actually the new law violation. I love it. Yeah. Absolutely. So again, a lot that we can do, right?
With absolutely, a lot.
All right, so listen, summertime's coming up. It's getting hot outside. People want to go to the beach. They want to travel. If you're on probation, can you still travel, or do you have to stay at home?
No, there's going to be restrictions. Well, it all depends on what conditions they've placed upon your probation, right? So obviously, if a condition is, you have to be, like you said, within the county, you better listen to that. Better not be in another county at the beach. I don't care if it's summertime, you're gonna get violated. So you have to pay attention to those conditions. Most of the time, traveling, any type of travel on probation, if it's gonna be outside of the county, it's gonna require you having to get clearance from your probation officer.
Right.
You're at their mercy. That's just what it comes down to. You are controlled by this probation officer for however long. Yeah.
They determine whether you're going to have a fun day at the beach or
pretty much
sit your butt at home.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. We have people that will go on a cruise, they come back, they're handcuffed when they get off the boat. So you really want to, make sure that just ask permission. And if you're cool with your PO and you have that good relationship, they'll probably approve it.
There's so many times I've seen people get approved by their PO, to travel and to do things. I mean, I have had conversations with probation officers just off the record, just talking, and that's the number one thing they've said to me is people don't realize that if you just communicate with us while you're on probation, we can really work out a lot of things.
Absolutely.
But when there's a lack of communication and then it happens, that's where they kind of don't care to have a conversation no more. They're like, you could have just talked to me on the front end.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to you on the back end. That's just how they are.
Sure.
So the number one advice that I always give people when they go on probation, I'm like, just keep the lines of communication open with your probation officer because you'd be surprised what they can allow and approve.
Absolutely. And even if you do have a legitimate violation, if it's relatively minor and you've had that good relationship with your PO, they might look the other way or help you out and maybe reprimand you but not file an official violation.
Absolutely.
Because the way you get arrested is a VOP warrant. So the procedure would be, obviously, the probation officer submits an affidavit, and the affidavit alleges, the violations. They submit it to the court. Yeah. The judge looks at it, decides, is there enough? If there is, he issues a warrant, and the warrant typically has no bond.
Yep.
So
pretty bad.
Yeah.
And the thing is, people don't understand with warrants in general, right? Especially if it ends up with a zero bond. When you go to that initial appearance, the initial appearance judges are just assigned for the week or for the day or whatever. It's not necessarily the judge assigned to your case.
Right.
These judges are not going to override another judge's decision to put a zero bond. They're not touching it.
Absolutely.
They are going to respect it. And so sometimes people think you can just go to initial appearance and you can argue that this other judge put a zero bond on the warrant and that's no. There's no, honestly, there is no world where they're going to override that unless this judge sees some grave mistakes in this affidavit that doesn't amount to a violation or a crime committed. Which is, come on, it's barely ever happens, right?
Sure, I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
And when you go on probation, you're giving up a lot of your rights. I mean, so many. And that's why I think I started the episode by saying, I like to call it prosecutor's revenge because they got you. At this point, they got you. Yeah. There's so many conditions. It's so easy to prove. A lot of people don't realize, unlike a new law offense, the state doesn't have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just a preponderance of the evidence.
Low.
And all they have to prove is that you willfully and substantially violated your probation by a preponderance of the evidence, and that's it.
That's it.
And what else? Hearsay, is that admissible? Yeah. Yeah, hearsay is admissible.
The rules of evidence are relaxed.
They're relaxed, not in your favor. And in fact, a lot of people don't realize, but the state can, in some situations, compel a defendant to testify against themselves.
Absolutely.
And we just did a podcast on the Fifth Amendment rights, your right to remain silent, not in a VOP hearing.
Not in a VOP, and that's why I don't like VOP hearings.
Yeah.
I don't like VOP hearings. My goal, at least my strategic goal as an attorney, is always to try to resolve it on the front end before getting to a hearing because the standard is low, that the state has to meet, and all those other things such as you can compel them to take the stand, which is not good. So my goal is always to try to resolve it on the front end and not get to the hearing because it's just the standard is so low. You have to really gauge to what courtroom you're in and the judge because if that preponderance is low and the state will likely be able to meet it because it's low, then you got to really think about what is the sentencing going to look like from this particular courtroom, this particular judge, how harsh is it going to be. You have to really weigh out a lot of factors. It's tricky.
Yeah, especially if it's a felony, because now you have VOP points on the score sheet added, right? Whether it be a technical or a new felony, you have issues with that. Good. No, so at a VOP hearing, we want to try and avoid them. But if we have to do a VOP hearing, we're going to try and convince the judge that our client did not violate probation. Or sometimes I'm not able to do that, and it was clear he did violate. And I said, okay, but it wasn't willful or substantial.
Yep.
And that's a catch-all where they could have violated, but if it's not a willful, substantial, like in your situation that you mentioned earlier, if it's only financial and it was a small amount and you can prove the person's indigent, there's some wiggle room in that.
Yeah, there really is.
You know, it is possible to survive it. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying today's episode of Badges to Briefcases. Today's episode ran long because we have so much valuable content for you, so tune in for episode 2 coming soon.